right, welcome to our second day of inferring. I hope you enjoyed the trash bag inferencing. I can't wait to see who was the winner in both classes, to see who had the most inferences that were correct with evidence. Don't forget that part. So today we're going to go on with inferencing. I'm going to share my screen again. And we are going to start today with a Harris verdict picture. These are some of the pictures that you saw at the beginning of the year when we were first talking about making inferences. And of course, this is a little bit different than when you're reading, because when you're reading, you have to make an inference based on the words that are in the story. But sometimes we also have chapter books that have pictures as well. So we're just going to practice some of our inferencing skills with this picture to start us out today. Now, remember that inferring is an educated guess based on evidence. And so we want to gather some evidence about this picture. Now, I'm going to go through my steps with you, but feel free to do your own steps as well. So first of all, when I just look at the picture, I would probably think there's some type of rodent. Or Mrs. Brennan spent lots of time in Florida, so maybe a gecko inside his house. Well, that'd have to be a pretty big gecko inside his house, and he's getting ready to smash it, right? He's tried to capture it. He's getting ready to smash it. But then I have to notice that there's also some more evidence included in this picture. For example, we have a title to this picture and we have a phrase of description. The title is under the rug. That still doesn't change my inference very much. But then our phrase is 2 weeks passed and it happened again. Okay, so that makes my inference change a little bit, because with that, I infer it may be something mysterious under the rug, something that maybe he's panicking because he's seen it before and now it's under the rug and he's frightened of it, right? So it could be something more mysterious. Notice I used an inference statement to start it with I infer, and then I gave you the reasons why I infer that, the evidence I have from the picture and the phrase. But there's lots of ways you could start an inferring statement. My guess is, maybe, perhaps, it could be that, this could mean, or I predict. My personal favorite is I infer. I just think that gets straight to the point. Why don't you go ahead and pause this screen for a minute, pause this video, and write down your inference. Maybe we can share them tomorrow at our 11:30 meeting. What do you infer is happening? So go ahead and pause your screen and write it down. All right, now that you have unpaused and come back, we're going to talk about analyzing a quote. Remember, from our research paper and from writing our personal narratives, it's the same as dialogue. It's a direct quote from someone speaking or from someone writing. An author can describe important events in a story by telling you about them. So I have a direct quote from a particular book, and it says, he checked Stanley's backpack and allowed him to keep it. Then he led Stanley outside into the blazing heat. Now, sometimes what a character says and how he says it is just as important as what happens. It can tell us what the person talking is like, what has happened in the past, or what will happen in the future. If I was going to make an inference based on the quote from this particular book, I might infer that the person who is he is somebody in authority, because it says he allowed him to keep the backpack. Well, if you allow someone to do that, that means you have to have authority or responsibility over them, right? Also, the fact that he allowed him to keep it makes me assume that he thought there was either something in Stanley's backpack that shouldn't be there, or he wanted what was ever in Stanley's backpack and there was nothing in it. He thought there was something he wanted, but there was nothing in it. So not only could it have been maybe a teacher, a principal, or a parent, those are all people of authority, but I could also infer maybe it's a bully, because bullies like to practice authority over people. Maybe he took his backpack to see if there was a Twinkie or a Nutter Butter in there, and then he allowed him to keep the backpack after he got what he wanted out of it. And then it says, then he led Stanley outside into the blazing heat. Well, the fact that he was able to lead Stanley still makes me infer that it's somebody in authority, because he's now allowed him to keep his backpack and he's now led him. And only people in authority can do those two things. Also, the fact that he went into the blazing heat would be an easy inference that it is summertime wherever Stanley and he are. So I could make a lot of inferences based on just those two sentences of quotes that I got from a particular book. Your job for today is pretty simple. You are going to do a four-step quote analysis from your book. Now, you can use a quote from the very first chapter of your book. You can use a quote from the chapter that you just read in your book. It doesn't matter to Mrs. Bean or I where you get the quote from, but it needs to be from the mystery book that we've assigned you. It says, because you can learn a lot from a quote by explaining it in 4 parts called a quote analysis. So the very first step that you're going to do in your Google Doc is write down the quote and the page it came from. Make sure to put the quote in quotation marks because it's a quote. We learned that from our history research paper, right? Whenever we put down anything that somebody else said in their exact words, we have to be sure to put them in quotation marks. All right, now step 2, you're going to explain who said the words that you put in the quote and to whom they were talking to. So we're looking for the characters talking to each other. So who was talking to whom, and it could be more than one person that they were talking to. Step 3 in your analysis is going to be to paraphrase the quote. Hopefully you recognize this word from January and February when we did our research paper. Paraphrasing means to put it in different words that mean the same thing, to put them in your own words. Don't use quotation marks on this, because quotation marks mean that you're writing exactly the words that were said. And instead here, you're writing down exactly your words or your take on what was said. So you don't have to put down quotes because your name will be on the assignment. So we'll know it's yours. And then last but not least is step 4. Explain what this quote tells you about this character. So the character who is speaking or the character who is being spoken to, or the plot of the story. What kind of person would say these things? And you have to give me some evidence. Why do you think that kind of person would say these things? For example, in the last quote I took from the story on the page, the slide before, I said it would probably be somebody in authority, because not very often do you hear a little baby brother allow someone to keep their backpack, right? Usually it's somebody in authority. So what type of person would say these things? And why would they say it? What do you think could be their possible motivation? And then last but not least, what would they have to know or be thinking about to say it? For example, in our last slide, they would have to know or think at least that there's something in that backpack that they want, or there's something that Stanley shouldn't have. So I can kind of infer what I think he is thinking, why he would have done or said what he did. All right, these are 4 pretty easy steps. After you do these, make sure you turn in the Google Doc with it, and then you have 3 chapters to read today. But the book you are reading from on Epic has very short chapters, so it shouldn't take you too long. But I want to make sure you get through it and find out who did it before the end of the school year. All right, I will talk to you later. Have fun reading and inferring.